still in school, teachers and principals.
Oh, man.
That's when you learn to get into the respect of authority, because that's when you really have to understand that, hey, because something my mom used to tell us whenever she would drop us off at school, remember who you are, who you represent. So and one thing I used to tell my son, whenever he would go to school, I'm like, hey, remember who you're supposed to listen to. You're supposed to listen to your teachers, and you listen to your principal, you listen to the authority figures, as long as they're telling you stuff that's not going to be, against the word of God,
that's right.
or contradictory to what we have raised you to do and tell you what to do, your mom and I. And he would always be like, yes, sir. And, we would always tell our mom, yes, ma'am, and everything. So again, there is a level of respect that you get from teachers, because what's one of the things that you always have to do when it comes to a teacher or a principal? How do you address them? You address them as Mr. and Mrs. or Miss, whatever their name is.
Ma'am and sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, ma'am. No, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, ma'am, and no, sir. It was always like, there's Miss Roby, Mrs. Gage, Mr. Adams. Those are the people you address them as that name, Mr. Riley, Mr. Edwards. I forgot that principal's name, Mr. Edwards, I want to say. And your coaches.
Yep.
Like Coach Wesley.
Right.
To this day.
It's still that.
It's still
yep.
Coach Wesley. I was telling my boy the other day, I was like, look, man, I'm 46 years old. There's an individual named at our church named Mr. White. I address him as Mr. White because he's old enough. He's at least, I always say it's got to be at least, he has to be old enough to be my dad, or she has to be old enough to be my mom, And for me, honestly, that's like 15 to 20 years. If they're 15 to 20 years older than me and beyond, I got to give them that respect. Hey, you could just call me Samuel. Okay, Mr. Samuel.
Yeah. I'm cool. Yep.
No. I mean, no, you can call me Sam. You don't have to call me Mr. Sam. I was like, with all due respect, I have to call you Mr. Sam. If not, I'm going to call you Mr. Smith, which is your last name. But other than that, I'm going to call you Mr. Sam. If you want me to call you by your first name, I'll go ahead and give you Mr. Sam. But I got to call you Mr. I got to call you Mrs. I got to call you Miss. And that's something that you learn from whenever you start going to school, authority. Because you got to respect that authority. You got to respect the fact that teacher is in control of that classroom. That principal is in control of that school. What they say, go.
Let me ask you something, because that's true. When you were in school, did you and your classmates call teacher A? Did you say Miss? I hear that now. If can I go to the bathroom? Miss, that's not what we're doing. Miss. I was like, man, we couldn't even do that. It was Mrs., by the way, if
they're married.
They're married.
Right.
I mean,
if she's single,
stuff.
Is she single or
like they were serious about it like that. And I'm like, man, what difference does it make? And this is what I'm thinking, because you don't say that.
No.
But we could not call Mrs. Edwards Miss. Or not what I mean, we couldn't call her, like, okay, let's say
you can't address her only as Miss.
Only as that.
No.
And they do that now.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of my friends, they're like, so, this kid was doing this, whatever. So he called me, he said, Miss. And I turned around and I said, what you mean? He said, Miss. That's just what they do. And I said, why is that? She said, well, sometimes they don't know your name. I said, man,
what about that?
I said, whoa. I said, what do you mean? I said, when did this happen? February. I said, this dude been in your class since August. But he got like 6 other teachers. I said, man. And they looked at me, was like,
get out of here.
But sometimes they don't know your name. And because you'll send them somewhere and say, what class you came out of? I was in math. What class? What teacher?
Yeah.
My 6th period. They'll have to look on the computer and like, okay, you had.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I still know my math teacher from middle school, Miss Sweeney.
At one point, I knew all of them.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone, and I went from kindergarten all the way up through high school, and they were looking at me like, why would you know that? And I didn't have an answer. I don't know why, but some of the more influential ones, I know why I remember them.
Yeah.
But I would go through, and I'm talking about period by period. Like,
yeah.
This is who I had.
Yes.
And I don't know if I could do that now. I could probably get pretty close, but I could, because I have these very vivid memories of things, K through 12.
Yep.
Some of them, not all of them are traumatic. Like some of the stuff we talk about now is traumatic things based off of respect going wild, so to speak. Like this didn't go the way I thought it would. So I had to learn something. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. You know, the authority thing with teachers. The first thing I understood about them was the agency that my parents would give them.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and my mom drops me off, and they point and they point to faculty and say that is who you obey,
Well,
no
we're
matter
not
what.
around. Yeah. Yeah.
And I understood that to mean they were parents by proxy.
Yes.
So what did that mean? You got to do what they. Now it is very true that some are better than others. I can name some. I was like that lady, even at my age now, she was not a good teacher.
No.
That didn't matter.
Miss
It's-
Williams.
See,
You know who you are.
yeah, hey, look, you didn't do a good job, and you didn't try, and I'm still an effort guy. We talk about that with the kid. Hey man, effort, and then you fall short. We figure it out in anything, sports, anything.
Right.
Effort, no effort, it's scorched earth. But they didn't try, and so my dad, I can remember going to New Bethel for kindergarten. That was a church in Marshall, and I can remember him pulling up, and a guy named William. I think William's last name was Pittman. And he was helping out with make sure kids get from wherever they are across the street as opposed to maybe going somewhere they're not supposed to. He was the guy.
Gotcha.
And to go Mr. William. And Mr. William was nice. I remember him being really nice to me. I also remember thinking if I do something that's against the rules, I am going to have a problem.
Yeah, man.
No email, but no need.
No need. No.
Because, you know, the information will be conveyed. Chris
I
had
got
a
a
bad
story for
day.
you on that
I
one.
want to hear it then. I want to hear. Don't forget it. I'm
not.
you know, but that was the thing, and I remember that, and I remember the teachers there being very serious, more serious than I wanted to be. Like, hey, I don't want to take a nap. Why is that such a problem? It's what I'm thinking. Because again, you don't say that because then you got two problems. But the idea is you do what you're told to do. And I think the agency that they gave them was big, and so you get the respect like that. Now, what my parents did, and I stole from my dad, and I do this with my kids now, is when something's out of pocket, I need to know that too. We had an instance with that where a teacher said something fly the camera, and he didn't want to tell me, but I saw him when he picked him up. When I picked him up, I'm looking at him. I was like, "That's bad body language. Let's just see if he's gonna come out with it."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he didn't. And I don't do a lot of yelling. I'll do it, but I don't do a lot of it unless to
get the point across.
Unless I need to get the point across.
Yeah.
That's right. I think at that point you're losing control. Try not to do that.
Yeah.
But I said, hey, man, what's going on? He told me. And so we had to, well, I don't want you to go talk to her because I'm going to get in trouble. I said, no, you get in trouble if it happens that I find out. Because then I'm like, I need to know because I'm at work and I can't be there. And what I didn't tell him was, hey, man, I'm a dad. I'm scared something's going to happen. I think I told him that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see that point and I have respect still now. I had problems in college in calculus that I went to Dr. Robin Rudd. Shout out to her. We Facebook friends. She's so cool.
Nice.
She was just a brilliant. Yes, I don't know if she's teaching now. I think she's a college professor, maybe part-time, but she was brilliant.
Yeah.
But she was practical. And she was the one I think we talked about. And I said, hey, she said, look, if you would just focus more on class and things we're doing and not the girls in class, you have an A in here. And she played basketball in college. She said, I know what you're thinking because I used to hoop too. When she said hoop, it was over for me.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to see.
Now you connecting on a whole.
And I'm thinking, now this is some really old person who was probably 30-something at the time, right? So for me, you like, that's like 120.
Yeah.
Like, this is an older person that doesn't understand me because I'm in high school and I know things she doesn't.
Right.
She was real calm with it.
Yeah.
She was like, look, I know what I'm supposed to do. And she was great. And she's like, you'll be good in math and college. When I talked to her in college about problems, it was still, I don't know if she was a PhD yet, but it was still Mrs. or it was still Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she didn't require it, but that wasn't the point. But that's enough of that. What did you have to say just a second ago? You remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
so, okay, I remember I got him. It's so weird.
It's gonna be some y'all already laugh.
I'm like you. I consider myself a good kid.
All right.
But
I would agree.
But here I am talking about another story.
This is a heck of a segue.
Man, okay. So I got in the fight. This was in third grade.
Man, you brawling right today. I don't know. I don't know if I can hear you out today. I'm learning some things today.
So, man, it's a lot of places. Oh man, I don't know what's happening.
All right, man.
So anyway,
let's get.
I'm in third grade, right? And now this one, I didn't start it. Okay. So I'm in. Let me see. We were coming out of PE, And like I said, I was in third grade, Beekman Elementary. Shout out to Beekman Elementary in Beaumont.
One time.
Beavers, man, Golden Beavers.
Mhm.
So we were coming out of PE, and the guys were going to the bathroom or whatever before we went back to our homeroom class.
Yep.
And before I get into the bathroom, my best friend, Rob Turner at the time, him and a couple other guys, they come out, they were like, Baron, don't go in the bathroom. David Gathride's talking about your moms. And I'm like, what? And so I go in the bathroom and I did not hesitate. This dude's standing at the bathroom stall peeing, and I just walk up to him, and he took it. He looked at me. He was like, "Oh, okay." And next thing you know, we brawling. I mean, we going to town on each other. We're third graders. We don't know how to fight. So basically, nobody knows how to duck and dodge. We're blocking with our faces.
Right.
You know, and that's literally what was going on until one of the coaches comes in and runs in the bathroom and literally picks both of us up by the back of our shirts. It's kind of something that you see on TV. But
Time out.
What's up?
He was still in the bathroom.
Yeah, we were still. Yeah,
He was in the stall.
no, he was at the urinal. He was at the bathroom urinal. So by this time his pants fell. Yeah, his pants were down. Yep.
All right.
He had his drawers on, but his pants were down. Yeah.
That changed.
It was a hot mess. It was a complete hot mess.
So wait.
Okay.
You could wait until
Nope.
respect.
I thought I had the advantage.
and you did.
I did.
At least to start the fight.
To start.
That first round is yours.
Yeah, that's how I had that first round.
Respect.
I had that first round. But anyway, so afterwards, it's so weird. Afterwards, I said, they told me you were talking about my mom. He's like, I wasn't talking about your mama.
Wow.
And we started laughing about it.
Wow.
We were over it. We were over it while we were waiting for the principal.
Sure.
We're at the principal's office. We're waiting for the principal. Now, mind you, we already got paddled by the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the principal's office.
That's a given.
And we got paddled by the principal.
Yes.
Got sent back to our homeroom.
Mm-hmm.
Got paddled by our homeroom teacher. Mrs. Roby.
Oh.
Yeah,
wow.
Miss Roby. No, third grade. This was Mrs. Gage.
Wait a minute. They would get y'all, the teachers would get y'all after the principals got y'all?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all up on that.
Yeah, man.
We didn't do that.
Yeah. So we got paddled by the teacher when we got to the classroom.
No. When the principal get us, that was it. Folks.
Yeah. No, we got it from all three because Mrs. Gage is one of these old school black ladies, black teachers, you know, and she was like, you are not going to be some ruffians in my classroom.
Ruffians.
That was her words. You are
Hashtag.
not going to be some ruffians in my classroom.
All right.
So she was like, you two will respect each other.
Sure.
All of you other children in here will respect each other as well. I am not going to have heathens and ruffians in my classroom.
Right on.
Mrs. Gage. Boy, I love that woman. She was so awesome. But like I said, she popped us. She gave us a couple of licks. It wasn't a whole lot. It definitely wasn't as powerful as the principal. So because we were like, we already got it from Mr. Richards.
Yes.
So we was good. So after we got it from her, we were just like, all right, that ain't nothing, man. But David and I, we were good after that.
That's crazy.
Here's the score. Here's the real part of the story.
The what part?
Here's the real part of the story.
I looked at the weird part. I already heard the weird part.
The real part. Walking home.
Mm-hmm.
What are the neighbors? Barry, heard you got in trouble at the principal's office. You need to come in here. You know, remember when they say it takes a village?
Mm-hmm.
I went by 3 different neighbors and got popped by all 3 of them. You know better than that. You know your mother would not accept any type of would not tolerate any behavior like that. Man, I got it from 3 different neighbors before I got home. And when I got home,
buddy,
Mama was there.
Yep.
Usually Mama's at work. So this tells me, well, Mom told me later on, but this told me that she got a phone call while she was at work. So she decided she was going to come home early to make sure that she was there by the time I got home. Mm-hmm. I get home. She's like, you know what you're supposed to do? I said, yes, ma'am. I'm thinking that she didn't know nothing.
Right.
I'm stupid. I'm 3rd grade. All right, I'm dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I get into, so I go, do what you usually do. Go take a shower. Excuse me. And I get out the shower. All the towels are missing.
Uh-oh.
Can't dry myself off. So I'm just like, all right, maybe it's in the washroom. So
Exhibit A.
I decide to crack the door open in the hallway from the bathroom, and I'm looking around, and I'm just like, and I looked inside the little laundry cabinet, the towel cabinet or whatever that's in the hallway. I looked, no towels in there, and that's when it hit me. Oh crap!
Yep.
So I tried to hurry up and make a beeline to my bedroom, and Mom's standing there in her room, arms crossed, belt in hand. The belt, I think I've told you this story before. She named it Mr. Stimulator. This belt was like about a quarter of an inch thick.
No shout outs for that one.
That belt was about a quarter of an inch thick.
Yeah, man.
And about 2 inches wide. And she fold that thing in half, and she'd do that pop that people do with their belts.
So that pop, yeah. Yep.
She'd say, you come in here, you know what you're supposed to do, assume the position. And the position was you basically get on your knees and you lean up on the side of her bed with your rump in the air. Exposed and wet.
Yep.
And you put your hands together. You put your hands together because you're going to pray to God, please, Lord, don't let her kill me.
Yep.
Can I live? Can I live? I just want to live. My mom had great aim.
They always do.
She had great aim. Now, I have one auntie who had horrible aim, but I never got whooped by her. But all my cousins and her boys would tell me about her whippings was horrible. My sister even got it from her too one time. But anyway, I digress.
Hit something.
She hit something. Sometimes it be your butt, sometimes it be your ankle, sometimes it be your head.
Like
but
Denzel said, I'm leaving with something. I'm around the way.
I'm leaving. But man, my mama got me. She always 3 hits, and it would just be this line, this line. Be right across, and it's right at that. It was at that supple point of your booty.
Yeah,
that's right where your booty and your thigh meet. Yeah,
it's a bad place.
That's a bad
because nothing's
bro.
ever happening.
There's nothing happening back there
except for that.
Yeah,
that's a bad.
And dude, like I said, I'm still fresh out the shower, wet.
Yeah.
So you got the sting of that water.
Yeah.
You know, and the tenderness of the cheeks and the thighs, and boy, let me tell you.
That reminds me of.
So, like I said, that's 3 paddlings.
Yeah, you got beat up.
3 whippings.
We had a fight before.
And then Mom. And then the fight.
Yeah. Let's not forget about that.
So I got 8 beatdowns in one day.
That was like
jump up and get beat down.
It was like a 6 hour. It was like you had a shift of beatdown. It was like, no.
You didn't even get a chance to clock in or call
lunch break, but you had a shift.
Yeah.
That was tough. That's like that movie. What was that? Is that it's either This Christmas or Almost Christmas? With Regina King and Chris Brown and all that.
This Christmas.
Is that This Christmas?
This Christmas.
Oh, This Christmas was the one with Monique on it. Whichever one it was. And her husband was cheating. Regina King, her husband was cheating.
Yeah.
So she, called him out the shower.
Yeah.
And just beat him down. Yeah. I mean, I know it was a movie, but I could imagine that happening. I said, that could probably happen.
It was almost that same way, minus the Kunta Kinte vibes.
Yeah. No. Yours was a good old corporal.
Yeah, I was corporal punch.
That was corporal punch.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, like, you got pocket. It ain't no abuse here. It's
no.
It's an understanding.
It's definitely an understanding. I have no qualms with it looking back. Yeah. Of course, at the time, I'm just like, she beat me.
Yeah, right.
But looking back on it, heck yeah, I'd do the same thing.
That's a kid.
I would do the
that's
same
a kid felony you did, man. That's first. That's first degree.
That's what happens. You fool around. I mean, but that was, again, let's go back to respect here. You respect authority now because look here. I knew David too, because David, when we got back to school the next day, I asked him, man, what happened to you? He said, man, you don't want to know. And I told him what happened, and he was like, man, he was like, man, I got it almost just as bad as you. And he told me his story. So, I mean, look, DG and I, we both got it bad. We both got it bad, dude. So, but the thing is, here's the thing. We ain't never gotten another fight. Not just me and him, but for the remainder of that school year, and for the remainder of us going through that school period. In fact, I don't think I got in another fight in elementary school after that. I don't think my next fight was until I got beat up a few times in elementary school. I told you about that guy in 5th grade.
You wasn't teeing off on nobody.
I wasn't teeing off on nobody.
Starting fights.
I didn't know. I got into fights not until middle school, and that was because I got to protect myself.
Right.
And that's when guys was telling me, dude, you need to protect yourself. That's when I got caught up in other things too. But that's another story for another podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, but again, we didn't get any fight because we knew we were like, okay, principal. I mean, not only coach going to get us, principal going to get us, and maybe more likely Miss Gage is going to get us. And when we got to the 4th and 5th grade, we were just like, man, probably one of these teachers going to get us too. You know what I'm saying? Even if it wasn't Mrs. Gage, because at the same time, like you said, usually when the principal gets you and the coach gets you, that's all that you needed. Ms. Gage was built on a different level, though. She built different. She was like, nah, I'm going to make sure y'all understand this is my class.
Got my own rules.
I run this. So we were like, we ain't getting beat down like that again. I told him about the neighbors got me. He was like, oh, the neighbors didn't get me. He said he had one neighbor got him, but nobody else. And I was just like, but I'm like, man, I ain't about to fool around and get punished by my neighbors again. I had a healthy respect for my neighbors after that. It wasn't fear, though. And that's another thing, too. My moms, I had a healthy respect for my moms after that. It wasn't fear.
It was an understanding.
It was an understanding because you understood that you are going to be accountable for what you did wrong. That's a problem these days.
Mm-hmm.
There's no full accountability on these kids. There's no accountability with these adults, let alone just the kids.
I think that's the bigger problem.
That's the bigger problem right there. Because if there's no accountability with some of the adults out there, who's going to hold the kids accountable for what they're supposed to do? I put my boy in accountability. I know you do that to your boys too, because I've seen it in action.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was one time, and this was after you and I first met. I know I've told you this story before, reminded you about this before, but I still want to talk about this. Though.
Yeah,
I love it. Because I've told other people this story too. I tell them, I said, I got this friend. But I forgot what park we were at, but we were at some park, I think it was a go-kart track or something of that nature. And your oldest boy was acting a fool. And I was like, hey, chill out. You know, and I got on him. You know, I told him, I said, hey, man, don't act like that. You know, get on your good foot. You know better.
Knock it off.
Knock it off. You know better than that. And he was like, yes, sir. And he stopped and he went back to playing around with his friends or whatever and do what they do. I think he was with Kim's boy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Kim's oldest. Yeah, yeah. So, and you were sitting right next to me too, because your boy was to my right, you know, when I was saying this, and you were sitting to my left. And like I said, you and I just started really hanging out and knowing each other and everything. And after I did that, I turned and I looked at you. I was like, dude, my bad if I stepped out of line. I was like, just because, you know, it was just happened. I was right there and I just reacted. Like if I'm out of pocket, my bad. And you told me if you hadn't done it, I would have, when I reached out to grab him, I would have made sure that I punched you while I was reaching out to get him for not getting to him before I had to get to him. And when you told me that, I was like,
all right,
enough said.
All right.
Enough said. And I knew at that point, I was like, this is my dog. This is because it takes a village.
It takes a village. You need that village. If you
your
get it.
boy still looks up to me with respect because I will point out accountability. I want you to be accountable for your actions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to come at you. I've told this to my boy. I don't come at you because I like to come at you. You think I enjoy doing this? I hate punishing. I hate having to be, quote unquote, the bad guy.
It's not fun.
It's not fun. It's not me. I am laid back. I am chill. I like to relax. I don't like having to stress or deal with anything. But when you do something that's out of pocket that I know I have to address, I'm going to address it. And I'm going to be a little bit more upset because you're making me address this, especially when you know better. So I'm going to point out accountability. And I'm going to give it to you in a respectful manner, but it's going to be a healthy, respectful manner because you're going to be like, I don't want to deal with that again.
So, and you're going to know why.
Exactly. And you're going to know why. It's not going to be just because.
I'm confused.
What you call yourself doing, boy? Why? And call it a day.
And you don't get anything from it.
You don't get anything from it. What are you doing? Why did you do this? How is it that you came to the understanding that you think this would be okay for you to do this? Do you understand why this is not a good thing for you to do?
What's the rule?
What's the rule?
We talked about this.
Come on.
Why would you do that?
Why?
I try to make them have this flashback so they can. And sometimes I see it on their face. Like, man, why did I do that? And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yes.
So, you know, and you're a kid, so it's not like I'm saying, hey, man, you're in my house, you got to be perfect.
Because these are good kids. They
are good
understand.
kids.
Your
So
boys and
why-
my boy, they're good kids.
So
So they'll see it.
it's like,
They'll see
Why
it once
did
you
I?
bring it up. Yeah.
and their head will drop down. I said, now hold your head up and you stand in that because
Uh-huh.
you did that. So when you talk about it, you got to eat that. And what comes with that?
Yep.
Everything's not a butt whipping, by the way. But if there is,
Right.
there is. But you got to stand in that because now I want you to think, I don't want to testify in front of this guy anymore. His court sucks and court itself sucks, which is another thing. I don't want you in court.
Okay.
But it has to happen now. Because if you have, 35, 40 of these instances over a few years where you just do things and you get away with it, and you get away with it, and you get away with it, and the consequences aren't there, then you're lost because you're not afraid of any consequences
Mhm.
until it's too late.
Mhm.
And then you have something real permanent that diverts you in a way that you can't execute or feel like you can't execute your purpose. That's the thing I can't stand.
Because
man.
I told my son one time, I told him, I was like, dude, if you do something that's wrong and I'm the one who brings accountability to you, don't you understand that you got it good?
Right.
You got it good if I'm the one who's addressing it. You
Right.
got it good if I'm the one that you're having to talk to, because ain't nobody gonna love you like I do.
Right.
So ain't nobody gonna protect you and take care of you like I do.
And they shouldn't.
Exactly.
But you understand.
But
this.
you need to understand this, because when it gets to the legal system, they don't care about you. They're just going to see you as boy.
Yep.
You're out. And that's it. That's it. Me, and of course, now he's at that age, and he's been past that age of getting whippings, because this kid has a ridiculous pain tolerance, high pain tolerance. So whippings really didn't do him anything. I think I might have whooped him maybe twice, and that's it.
Dang, man, that sucks
You know,
for
I
you.
mean,
That's,
I mean, I had to come up with different ways to punish.
you had to figure something else out.
Yeah, I had to come up with different ways to punish him. I had to be very unique with him, because he was different. He was just very different. And like I said, he never was really a bad kid, and he still isn't a bad kid. But of course, a kid is a kid. And a boy is a boy. They're going to do what boys do. He's going to do what kids do. So having to punish him was always just a different venue all the time, a different adventure each time. Like one time I had to punish him for lying, but I had to do it in a different way, because, I mean, again, I couldn't spank him because he wouldn't understand that. So the best way I could think of to make him understand where he needs to be accountable for his actions was to throw away one of his favorite toys. But he had to do it. He had to do it. I told him, go upstairs and get your, whatever this favorite toy was. So some Thomas the Tank Engine thing at the time. Yeah.
Wow.
So this tells you how old he was.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he runs upstairs, he gets it, he thinks he's about to have fun playing with his toy or whatever like that. And I said, come on, let's go. We walked outside, and I said, you see that big old black can outside on the road? He said, yeah. I said, go throw it away. Daddy, no! Daddy, no, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I promise I won't do it. I said, okay, that's good. Go. Boy was crying so
So he had to
loud.
put it in the big can, the one that come here.
The big can.
So he had to shoot it in there.
Big can.
He had to lay it up.
But that's another thing too. No, I made him work. it. He had to put his toy down while he's blubbering with tears. Now, mind you, a couple of neighbors came outside because they heard him crying so loud and so much.
What's
They were like,
going
"What
on
the heck
over
is
there?"
going on?"
Yeah.
And they saw me standing out there, and he's just crying and everything. So they're just like, okay, he must be going through something. So I made him go down to the end of the driveway, open up the can on his own. But he had to put his toy down to do it. He put the toy in the can, and he started wailing even louder after he threw it in there. And he started walking up to him. I said, go close that. I said, you didn't find it open. Close it. Find it the way. Finish it the way that you walk away from it the way you found it. And he went, and he's still crying, struggling to close that lid, but he did. And not 30 minutes after we got in the house, here comes the dumpster.
That truck.
That truck came, picked up that trash, and took it away. And I ain't gonna front. I almost wanted to shed a couple of tears because I spent like about $100-something on that
Sometimes the
toy.
train was high.
Yeah.
Was it the locomotive?
Yeah. Oh,
The blue one?
yeah.
It was Thomas.
It was Thomas. Oh, dude, it was Thomas.
Oh, I'm not well now.
Dude,
And they was high.
they was high. Yes,
Man.
they was high.
That's a good cartoon. It wasn't like
It was good. It was not bad.
It was pretty
It
good.
was not bad. It wasn't pretty. It was pretty
Oh, that's
good.
tough.
It was pretty
That's
good.
tough.
Yeah, no, it was
That's
tough,
tough.
man. It was a lesson for him and for me.
I hug my guy. Yeah, that's tough.
That was a punishment for both of us. But man, but after that, dude, don't you know I've never had that boy lie to me before? Lie to me since? Never. A couple of times he tried to test me, put him in his place, and he backed down. He was like, "No, you're right, my bad."
It would have been more instances if you don't do the hard things.
Because that was the thing. It was the fact that, and he even reminisced on that. He was like, it was the fact that I had to throw it away. Because if I threw it away, I'm just looking like mean old dad. He threw it away because he lied.
What you did.
You lied. You, number one, you the one that spilled Kool-Aid on the carpet. And on top of that, then you want to lie about saying it wasn't you. Somebody else did it. It's only me and you in the house.
I did that.
Your mama at work.
I did that.
It was either you or it was me. And if I came downstairs, see you sitting at the table with spilled red flavor punch on the table and on the carpet.
I don't know how they got there.
But that wasn't me.
That wasn't me, dog.
That wasn't me. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay, kiddo. But
we're going to holler at you, Thomas.
we're going to holler at you, Thomas. Thomas got to go. Thomas got to go. Another level of respect. Someone special.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at the respect of having to be with somebody else, and you have to think about somebody else. It's not just you anymore. Now it's somebody else that you have to think about. And this is just boyfriend, girlfriend thing. This isn't, this is just kind of, puppy love, high school love type thing. Some people might be middle school too, but for the most part, you're still a teenager.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Maybe in your early 20s. But there is a different type of respect that you have whenever you link up with somebody who is more of a romantic partner or friend than you had before. Because you're not going to treat, when you started dating your wife, you weren't treating her like you treated, the boys. You know what I mean? Or even your homegirl. Different. It's a different level altogether, because you are now respectfully trying to impress her and trying to, what's the word I'm trying to think, cater to her, and make sure that she is taken care of and make sure that she is happy. Because at that point, that's what we're all looking at. We're just trying to make her happy.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
She's just trying to make sure you're happy. That's it. It wasn't anything beyond that. It wasn't like, I need to take care of my man or I need to take care of my woman. It was just, I just want to make you happy. And that's all it was to it, because we were still young and dumb, don't fully understand everything that's going on, just barely understanding the birds and the bees. And that's pretty much the gist of it. But there was still a different level of respect that you're giving this individual than you were for any of your friends whatsoever, because now this person is getting your time. And here we are coming back to the respect of time again. You know what I mean? And if you weren't giving this individual, this someone special, the time that they sometimes demanded or warranted or wanted or needed, or however you want to put that part of that relationship, there was going to be a problem. You didn't call me. You didn't page me.
Man.
Showing our age.
Welcome to Skype.
You didn't page me. You didn't hit me up on the two-way, on the sidekick.
Yeah. What's the thing that chirp? The Nextel?
You didn't.
That Nextel was a problem.
Nextel was a problem.
Because you
It really
couldn't be
was.
like,
Oh, man.
I ain't have time.
Oh.
She's like, so in
No.
between classes, you couldn't hit that chirp while you was walking. You couldn't do that?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. You couldn't call the house. Or you couldn't drive by. You couldn't meet me at my locker. It was so many things.
There's an expectation.
There's an expectation. But there's an expectation, like I said, that's beyond just a friend. So there was a different level of respect that you had to give your girlfriend, or for your girls out there, you had to give to your boyfriend. And even still to this day, when it's girlfriend, boyfriend, even if you're adults and everything of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a level of respect that you have to give that individual, because now, especially as older as we are, it's a respect for, man, here it comes again. Time. It's a respect for their time, because now as adults, even if you're with or without kids, you have responsibilities, and there's a respect that you have to understand that, hey, I got a life I got to live. I got a job. I got to go to work. I got to pay my bills. I got to, meet up with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
or talk to my parents, or take care of my parents. I got nieces and nephews I got to tend to or deal with. I got, siblings and in-laws who are, not my personal in-laws, but in-laws of my siblings, or somebody of that nature, or I've got other responsibilities with the church, responsibilities with other kids that look up to you, or something of that nature that you might be a mentor for. Side hustles. Some people have side hustles that you have to give them their respect for that. If they have kids, you got to give them respect for the time they have to have for their kids. Same thing, like if they have to deal with their ex, you got to give them respect for that, because look, it ain't all about you.
Not no more.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
It's not all about you.
Yeah.
You have to understand your place on the totem pole. And trust me, you are on the totem pole. Everybody has a totem pole. And you got to understand where your place is. For anybody out there who understands me, I'm a very religious individual. I read my Bible, I study my Bible, and I talk to God on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day, whether my day is good or bad. But God is my number one on my totem pole. Second on my totem pole is me. Third is my son. Fourth just depends on who you are. Friends, family, loved ones, church members, co-workers.
The top three is intact though.
That's intact.
Yeah.
No matter what. No matter what. So let's say I start dating. She ain't gonna come past number 4. Number 4 will probably be the highest she can get. Because like I said, number 1 and number 2 is going to be all the time number 1 and number 2, God and me. Number 3 is always going to be my son. Until he gets to an age where I really don't have to worry about him and take care of him.
Man, when does that happen?
I don't know.
Sidebar.
You need to tell me. You're the one that got the kid in college.
Man, I don't want to talk about it. Let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it. That's the other side of the podcast. You didn't mention before. It's the Kit and Carr, right? You got Kit, Michael Knight, and you got Carr, the bad part.
Oh, man.
Let's not talk about it. But yeah, you're right. You're right, man. I think romantically, it's the respect thing is, it's a practice. Like spirituality you mentioned is a practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you hear people say, I'm a lawyer. I practice law. I think a lot of things you do is a practice. And the reason is
practice medicine.
Yeah, you practice this because it's not one size fits all. This thing is like all the other things.
Right.
And so from, the romantic point of view, on my end, I'm big on respect, really, really big on that. Not so big on how much money she has and other things that are, with a lot of folks, they would consider that to be very, very important. Some of these things.
Yeah, huge on the checkbox list.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm so unique. I'm thinking above the fray and people aren't where I am. I'm just saying.
Right.
I never, for one, I mentioned money. I never really cared about that. And I remember being younger, and I remember being with homeboys like, man, but she do this for a living. I don't know if I can handle that. We getting into the 20s. She needs to make, air quote, good money. And I was like, I don't care so much about that. And I was like,
man, my whole thing was steady income. That's it.
It just
steady. I don't care. I don't need to know. I don't need to know a dollar amount. I just need to know steady income.
I felt like if
you're safe with your job.
I felt like what your plan is, I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do something and you said, in order for me to do this, I ain't gonna have no income. I'd have to hear what that is and then roll with that.
Yeah.
The same thing with me if I want to do that. Now, I never had that. I went to engineering school thinking I'm going to get out, I'm going to work. And that was my thing. And the things that I need to get, I should be able to do and the things that I want, I'm gonna figure that out,
Mm.
whether I'm with somebody or not. So I wasn't looking to link up with somebody and say, okay, now I can get this Bentley because now you got this and you got that. I didn't really have that.
Right.
You know, I did want a Mercedes SL when I was in college because I thought that's how it was going to work. You know, you get out and make all this money. And then I realized that wasn't true at all. I don't know where I got that from, but that's not true at all. But the thing is,
that's a lot they sell you in college, man.
Man, listen, we ain't got time.
Nah.
But I did want that, and I learned a lesson. I learned to respect the cost of things. But then realize it wasn't that important. But you have to go and engage people, because what happens is whatever the romantic level you're coming in on, however you do this, the commitment level, wherever you are, you have to be respectful to the point that you know we're guys. So
yeah.
If it's a lady that we're going to engage in this way, something starts to build, and there's this romantic energy, and then you're getting into whatever you're going to get into, this relationship, you have to be able to say, okay, if she's doing this just by default, there are vulnerabilities and investment that she's making that I can hold in the palm of my hand and I can do things with. I can damage these things she gives me, which hurts her, or I can enhance these things, or I can do neither. And then the relationship probably in trouble because he's like, I'm here and this is not working. We don't work well together. That's those weird relationships where people break up and say, it wasn't really a bad breakup, it just didn't work out.
Right.
But if you take those things and they say, you know, okay, I'm jumping out the window with you and we're a boyfriend and girlfriend, whatever level that is, the respect level better be there.
Yeah.
Because now you have to account for the things that are important to them. Literally, the day you decide you're going to be an item, whatever you think an item is going to be, that changes your complete walk. Like there's a part of that pie that you mentioned, you know, the hierarchy you mentioned, they're in there somewhere.
Yeah.
For some reason with me, you had a better illustration for me. I'm thinking Mortal Kombat, where you going up the wall.
Yeah.
You fight the next person. Well, you know, the totem pole is better. And what you got to be thinking is, how am I going to do great things with this opportunity that I have, as opposed to, well, I got to learn to respect, so I don't want to, you know, make her mad or do this or make her sad. It's more of, you know, did you hear her when she said?
Yeah.
Or for the ladies or for whomever, did you hear your person when they said these things, what they're going to do? There are things that my wife talks about that she said, man, I wish I'd have done that. And I tell her, man, I don't mind trying stuff at a later stage, whereas it might be something that people do at 30. I'm in my 40s and I'm doing, or they do in their 20s. My time is just different. I want that thing.
Everybody's timeline is different.
Everybody's timeline is different.
Right.
I want to know these things that you want to do. I want to know these things that you don't want to go through. And I want to know the things that you have had happen, the things that you feel comfortable telling me, so that I know that these are the places I need to operate in. Now, what does that mean? That means that when I go through my phases in life, the daily phases, let's be honest, everybody has days and some days are better than others. How you handle them makes the difference. If you are a person that is moody, I have a big problem with moody people.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear that? I do. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And moody, that doesn't mean you had some trauma and you're reacting to it, so you're in a tough place. I'm not without compassion.
Yeah, we're not talking about triggers.
Something significant where you're on the ground, you're like, hey man, I'm down here, and you need to understand why. I'm talking about just manufacturing negativity.
There you go. Yeah.
And then
yeah,
having this unhealthy addiction to negativity where you are strung out on negativity. You have to have it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, what part of that? Where's the tranquility in that? Where are you going to get that from? The stuff that you watch is full of that. Mm-hmm. And then the stuff that you talk about is full of that. Mm-hmm. And then you're full of that. Mm-hmm. And then you got people around you that are scared to say it because they think you get angry, which again, we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We don't really care because me and you just be like, hey, I will fully expect if I were acting like that, there will be a one-on-one conversation facilitated by you saying, hey man, you ain't got to come by, but we need to talk about this.
Right.
You did that and I think you're out of pocket. I think you would say those words, they would leave your mouth and you would say that may be the last time our friendship is at the level that it is. And I think you would take that leap. You ought to be at a point where you don't want to disrespect someone to where you get to that point. But if they're in a place where you need to advise and say, hey, I see something here from the sideline on my wire camera, I can see it. You're in a place where you shouldn't be. And I think that respect level is something that really doesn't sell well on Netflix specials and things like that.
Right.
And that,
Right.
you know, you can't do these movies and say, let's talk about this. But I think if you have a conversation about it, these things come out and they'll say, yeah, I think this is one thing we should do. And here's another thing we should do. And here's what respect is to me and all that. And if your significant other is there and you come home and say, look, let's talk about that. I think you'll find that you'll get some gems out of that, man.
I agree.
And I think when I've done it right, because I've been,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's how it's delivered.
yeah,
You know, if it's done right, it's not just like, okay, I said what I said. No. It's got to be delivered a particular way to make sure that you don't cause any conflict in what's trying to be articulated.
I haven't always been very good at that. And I mean, I don't have this edgy personality. But I've looked back and I've owned it. I said, man, I didn't do a good job with that. If I'd have been more respectful of this person's whatever, that one thing wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm a full believer, you know, in where I am right now. Speaking of romantic relationships, they all had to die for me to get here. So that's
Yes.
a good. So that I don't have a lament for that,
No.
but I do have a full accounting of, hey, you know, Big Circle, you should have done this. In that,
Yeah.
and I can account for that, so I can speak on that and say maybe you should take a look retrospectively and say, you know, I should have done better there. And then with offspring like we have, you could teach them these things, and then just with your friends, you can allow them to understand through you being honest and vulnerable about that. But I think respect is a big thing. That if we were bigger on that, a lot of the other problems don't even occur.
Yeah.
To get me out of pocket, you disrespect me in a relationship, man, I am not a good person to be around. I know people take it better than I do. I just don't take it well because I think, why would you do that? I mean, that was very disrespectful. Why would you do that way? So I think if we were more into that, I always say that, you know, perhaps, you know, people will know more in mass, no more than what these comment sections are under these articles and things that we read. They say what they mean. And if they do, you don't see a lot of things about respect there romantically. But anyway.
Dude, I could not agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. And it kind of jumps into the old segment of with respect when it was comes to your spouse, you know, because that's like the next thing after, you know, tonic love and everything of that nature. Then there's another level of respect for your spouse because there are things that you have to like work through. There are changes that you have to deal with because, again, when it was just boyfriend and girlfriend, your goal was just to make them happy.
Right.
That's it. You know, you be happy and they be happy at the same time. That's it. Now you got a spouse.
That's next level.
That's next level.
Yes.
Because it goes beyond just making somebody happy.
That's right.
It goes beyond just you being happy. This now we're looking at, again, we're talking about the topic of respect here. There is love in respect. There's definitely love in marriage. There should be love in a marriage. There are some people out there, I'm not going to say a lot, but there are some people out there who try to say that men don't need love. They just want respect. No, I'm going to put a kibosh on that right here, right now.
We can do a show on that.
Dude. Yeah, we can do a whole pod.
Like a 10-hour show.
We can do a whole pod on that. And that's probably going to come up here.
A mini-series.
At one point. Yeah. But we cannot stress enough how much a man needs to be loved. Now, a man needs to be loved. That love can be delivered through respect, but that doesn't mean that all we need is just respect. Let me tell you something. I need to be loved, not just told I love you too. Because I said I love you, and then you say I love you too. No, I don't need that.
Actionable.
I need actionable, tangible, speak on it, actionable, tangible love. Because I need to see your actions. I need to see you in the moment doing something that you know that I like, doing something that you know that I need, telling me things that I need to hear, not what I want to hear, what I need to hear. I also want you to speak your truth. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with what you are thinking, what you are feeling, what you are going through, and how it affects us. Because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing. So it needs to be reciprocated. But at the same time too, but the only way you can deliver love like that is if you have an actual respect for that individual. If you don't respect anybody, how are you going to call yourself loving that individual?
You don't have a basis.
You don't have a basis. Respect is the basis of any relationship whatsoever. Any relationship whatsoever. I don't care who you are, what you're talking. We just went through a list of all these different types of relationships, and we still have a couple of more that we could speak on as far as parents towards children, because we spoke on children towards parents. We're talking about parents towards children now. And there's also a respect for yourself and a respect to the Almighty. Okay, but going back to just the spouse for right now, there are so many different relationships that you have to have respect for in order for those relationships to thrive. And the relationship and the respect for that spouse is one of those relationships. It's paramount, because if you can't have a respect for your spouse, how can you raise your children to have a respect for their significant other in the future? Or how can you raise your children to have a respect for your spouse when you don't respect your spouse? If you're not respecting your spouse, you can't love your spouse. You can't love somebody you don't respect.
That's true.
That's period, point blank. You can respect somebody you don't love, but you can't love somebody that you don't respect. Like I said, if there's no love there, then there's definitely no respect there.
And you're probably wasting some time.
Wasting a lot of time.
And it's not uncommon.
No,
and
unfortunately,
I
that's the reason why the divorce rate is so high. It's beyond 50-50 now.
That's disappointing.
It really is.
It's not surprising, but it's disappointing. I will say, I suspect people that are listening will want to hear as much organic stuff as they can. I think we've given them some of that.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of my marriage, I can remember vividly being in a space where I was just like, okay, well, first off, most of the arguments, the really heavy ones, happened in the first few years. We just got to a point where, most of the time these things flatten out, and we're not on the green lack of maturity stuff as far as marriage is concerned.
Right.
Because you flatten it out. But what my wife did was say, look, we've got to figure this out. Whereas sometimes I would say, I don't want to figure it out. I'm a science guy. I want to win an argument. And, I just want, and then I get to plant my flag and we move on. And she just, a lot of times in a place that wasn't very calm, she would just say, we're not doing it that way.
Yeah.
And I have given her credit in the past when I talk to people and they say, well, what's marriage is about? So I sit back in the chair like a really old guy and just start spouting stuff out until they run for the hills. But, I said, she did things to make sure we stayed intact when she didn't have to. She could have just been like, well, fine. If you're not in a space where you're willing to do the things that we need to do, I can also go in that space and we can do that. We know how that ends. But the respect level she had was, she was saying, look, boy, you ain't perfect. You ain't close. And this is not her quoting, but this is the sentiment I got.
Right.
But I respect you enough to know that this is something that it's worth doing more and putting more into it than you are looking to do at this time. This is in the midst of some knockdown and drag outs. That it's funny to me because I would say if I have 100 friends that know us, maybe 96 of them think we're the Huxtables. I find that to be hilarious, knowing that the life that we live is good.
Yeah.
And I can see why they say that.
Yeah.
Because you've been around us. We, if there's an issue, we don't show out.
No.
It's not that. We're both very clear on that. But, I find it to be hilarious because I said, you give me credit. No. Y'all are relationship goals. That makes me cringe. I said, because I don't really feel worthy of that. I take the good things that we do, and I'll take a compliment. Our generation, by the way, don't take compliments very well. That's another pet peeve that I have. you give somebody props, they deflect because they've got this thing in them where it's just like, I'm not worthy. I'm trying to make sure my kids don't get that. Anyway,
That's a work in progress.
That's a toughie.
That's a
That's
work
a
in
toughie.
progress.
I was a full grown up before I realized that was a deal, and I might have had that problem too. But she said, we have to work through this, and that was a respect thing because it was like, you're not going to disrespect me by coming in a covenant relationship. We go through what we went through. We go to St. James A.M.E. and we make this happen. This is not a thing where, hey, well, we gave it a whirl and that's it. And it was just a balance. Like some things need to end. There are relationships, marriage, long-term work. They need to end. I know people disagree with that, but hey, I have a microphone. How you like that? How you like that? Now I'm the bull. You know what I'm saying?
It's my platform.
You know what I'm saying? How you like
I'm
that?
I'm saying what I want to say. I said what I said.
It is what it is.
I said what I said.
And there it is. And anything you want to put there. Some of these things need to end.
Right.
No,
I agree.
But
I've had to push back on that too before.
Yeah. Look, because people want what they want. I want to see you guys, do it. There isn't a space where that would work. A lot of people will tell you that, and folks just won't accept it. I know I've been that person. Something's about to fall apart, divorce or whatever, and I just said, please don't do that. Because selfishly, I don't want you to do that because I like what I see, but I don't have to deal with what you deal with. It's the answer that I got back. But what my wife did, to her credit, was just saying, no, respectfully, you're not going to tear this down and pull this apart. All while simultaneously probably thinking, I don't even know if I want to be around this dude anymore. Maybe he's right. But I think she was saying, no, I think this is the avenue that we're going to take. I respect you enough so even when you're out of pocket, that I'm going to make sure that what we've built, we don't throw away. And so when I talk to my friends about that, and I say, well, you're a good guy, you this and that, they give me credit for being a great husband. I said, well, let's talk about the days when I did not have a good day at the office. When my ERA was very high, my field goal percentage was very low, whatever you want to call it, sports analogy wise.
Right.
Those days, y'all weren't there. Y'all were at work. Y'all weren't around. You didn't see that episode.
Right.
That was one that didn't make it to the DVD.
Yeah.
And I try to
That's
tell
the part that hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah. So, that's why I tell people, and they think this is bad. I say, hey, man. Oh, man, you like being married? I do. Yeah, because single is being tough. I said, no, I like being single. No, marriage is better. I said, I don't know. Because I like them both. And I think there's a space where, and I'm studying the Bible about this, but there's a space where there's room for both. And I think there's some people that, want to be single, and that's fine if the reasons are healthy. And they want to be married, and that's fine if the reasons are healthy. I said, but I don't recommend these long-term relationships to anybody unless you are ready to respect.
Boy.
And to clock in and to be consistently respectful. You have to, it is, every day you wake up, you sit up in bed and you breathe, you're on the clock.
Yeah.
Respect-wise, you have to do that. If you're willing to do that, you got a puncher's chance. If you don't, I don't know, even single, you're going to have some problems because the other relationships are going to.
There are changes that you have to understand, that you have to go through, because there are different, because let's just look at I'll just let you speak on a little bit on it, by the fact that when you and your wife got together, there was a level of love that y'all had. And there was a little bit of a parting, and then y'all brought it back. And there was a little bit of a parting, and y'all brought it back.
One more game.
And there was a little bit of a parting, and y'all brought it back. And eventually there'll be another little bit of a parting. And eventually I'll bring it back. There are different stages and eras and differences of love.
Right.
But there's only one thing that maintains, is that's the respect.
Yep.
Because as long as the respect is always there, because respect is like you were talking about when we were talking about time. It's linear.
Yep.
It's linear. It's never going to change. It's always going to be there. You can't, you can say lost respect for you, or I gained more respect for you. You didn't. You really didn't. Respect is going to be the same regardless. It's just a different phase of that respect. But the thing is, the respect always maintains the same level. love can go up and down, but it really doesn't really go up and down. It just changes. It morphs. It takes on a different look. It takes on a different shape, a different view, mainly a different view, because there are times because your eyes change, and you're going to have to go to the optometrist and get your eyes checked out, and you're going to have to realize I need some new lenses so that I can see straight. So once you see straight with those new lenses, okay, we're back in love. Yeah. We're back on that we're back on a different level of love, but it's still love. You're just looking at it in a different type of scope, a different pair of lenses. The lenses aren't shaded. They're not tainted. They're just adjusted because there's an adjustment level for your love. And that's what people have to understand with a spouse. You have to understand that there's going to be changes in view of your love. Your love is going to change. It's going to morph. There's going to be a new view of it. It's not going to, if the respect stops, then time is right behind it.
Yep.
And love is blind, and your love will go blind.